I opened my eyes to blinding white lights and the sound of a heart monitor beeping steadily beside me. I couldn't move at first. My body felt heavy. My head throbbed. And yet, in the stillness of that sterile hospital room, one detail screamed louder than the pain. The chart at the end of my bed didn't have my name on it. It said, Harper Morgan. But that's not who I am. I'm Ella Morgan. My heart rate spiked. And that's when the fear started crawling in. Hey, I'm Ella. Or at least I was, before someone took my name, my identity, and the life I worked so hard to build. If you want to know how my own sister stole my face, my fiancé, and my future, and how I plan to take it all back, stay with me. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels, because trust me, you'll want to hear every part of what happened to me. Now, let me take you back to that hospital room. I'd just come out of a coma after a car accident they told me nearly killed me. Broken ribs, fractured skull, internal bleeding. I was lucky to be alive. But luck doesn't feel like waking up in someone else's life. Nurses came in with practiced smiles. One called me Harper. The other corrected her, Miss Morgan. And I knew something was wrong. Deeply, terribly wrong. They told me I'd been disoriented, confused from the trauma. Memory loss was common, they said. But I hadn't forgotten who I was. I remembered everything. My apartment on 5th Avenue. My job as lead designer at Helix Tech. My fiancé, Daniel. My dreams, my routines, my memories. My life. And my sister Harper? We hadn't spoken in months. She'd always been the wild one, the jealous one, but she was still my sister, or so I thought. When they finally discharged me, I expected to go home, to my home. But the driver waiting outside didn't recognize the name Ella. He smiled and said, Miss Morgan, your apartment's ready. The address he gave wasn't mine. I fought him, told him he had the wrong person. He didn't even flinch. That's when I noticed something chilling. The name on the medical bracelet around my wrist. Harper Morgan. I tried to call Daniel, my fiancé, straight to voicemail. I checked my phone. It was brand new. No contacts. No texts. My social media wiped. No trace of Ella Morgan. Only Harper. The apartment I was taken to was cold, modern, decorated like a magazine spread, expensive and personal. On the fridge was a photo, Daniel and Harper, smiling, her hand on his chest, wearing my ring. I collapsed on the kitchen floor, my chest tight, breathing shallow, because deep down I already knew what had happened. She didn't just steal my ring. She didn't just take my name. She took my entire life. And somehow she'd made the world believe she was me, and that I was her. I went to my old job. The receptionist looked puzzled when I asked for my ID. I'm Ella Morgan, I told her. She blinked. Don't you mean Harper? I said no. She tilted her head. You were terminated 3 weeks ago. That's when security came. That's when they told me to leave. Like I was some crazy stranger. Even my own mother didn't believe me. When I called her, shaking, crying, begging for help, she said, Sweetheart, the doctors warned us you might get confused. I said, Mom, it's me. It's Ella. Harper's done something. She interrupted me. Honey, I am talking to Ella. Please rest. We love you. She hung up. I stared at the phone in disbelief. It wasn't just my sister. Everyone was in on it. At that moment, I knew. This wasn't some accident. This wasn't confusion. This was betrayal. Deliberate. Calculated. Cruel. Harper had been planning this for months. Maybe longer. And I'd been blind. But I wasn't going to stay down. She stole everything from me. My name, my love, my reputation. But she didn't steal my truth. And now I was going to take it all back, no matter how long it took. Because if Harper thought I was gone forever, she had no idea what I'm capable of. The first night back from the hospital, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of that cold, unfamiliar bed in an apartment that was supposedly mine, surrounded by expensive furniture I'd never chosen, staring at photographs that told a story I didn't belong in. Every surface had a frame. Harper and Daniel in Rome. Harper and Daniel at our engagement party. Harper with a golden retriever I'd never seen before. Her hair, curled the way I always wore mine. Her lipstick matched mine. Her laugh, captured in all the pictures, looked too much like mine. She didn't just steal my name. She was wearing my skin. I opened drawer after drawer, desperate for something that felt real. My journals, old photos, a sweater, anything I might recognize. But all I found were carefully arranged pieces of Harper's version of Ella. Everything felt staged, manufactured, sterile. That night, I found a bottle of sleeping pills in the bathroom cabinet with my name on it, her name, but I didn't take them, because I needed to stay sharp. She had stolen my life, and now I needed to figure out how, and why. The next morning, I took the elevator down to the lobby, determined to start piecing everything together. I didn't even recognize the building's staff. One of the security guards smiled and nodded. "Morning, Miss Morgan." I wanted to scream. I left the building and took the train uptown, back to the neighborhood I actually lived in before the accident. Or thought I did. It was like visiting the ghost of myself. The apartment door I had the keys to didn't work. Someone else lived there now. A middle-aged man answered when I knocked. He looked confused when I asked for Ella Morgan. "She doesn't live here," he said. "I've been renting this place for a month." I asked how long the woman before him had lived there. He shrugged. "Didn't meet her. Management said she moved out abruptly." I called the landlord. Pretended I was doing a background check for a new tenant. The woman on the phone was polite but firm. "There's no record of Ella Morgan ever living there," she said. "But I whispered. "I'm sorry," she said again. "That name isn't in our records." I walked aimlessly through the neighborhood for hours. Stores I used to frequent, cafes where baristas used to know my order. Nothing felt the same. No one remembered me. When I pulled out my bank app, I nearly collapsed on the sidewalk. The balance, $47.36. No savings. No investments. No credit cards I recognized. My name was gone from everything. By the end of the day, I had one mission: find Harper. She wasn't responding to texts or calls, but she'd made a mistake. She left me with her apartment, which meant there were clues there. That night, I began searching the place more methodically. In the back of the closet, behind a box of boots, I found a locked drawer. I forced it open with a butter knife. Inside was a file folder. Photos, receipts, journals. The first photo on top made me go cold. It was Harper, standing in front of my company's headquarters, wearing my ID badge. She had dyed her hair to match mine, even gotten a small scar near her lip removed, a scar she'd always hated, but that made her distinct from me. There were receipts for appointments, facial treatments, cosmetic procedures. She'd been changing her face, subtly, slowly for months, planning to become me. I flipped through a small black notebook. It was hers. The first few pages were ordinary. Lists, quotes, grocery items. But halfway through I saw it. People love Ella. She walks into a room and everyone notices. Daniel never looked at me the way he looks at her. But when I wear her perfume, he blinks. When I laugh like her, he smiles longer. If I had her life, I'd never waste it. I felt sick. There were more entries. Coded notes about meetings she attended, pretending to be me. Passwords. Names. There were even transcripts of my therapy sessions. How had she gotten those? Unless, had she stolen my files? Or had someone given them to her? I spent the next 3 days doing nothing but digging. I stayed hidden inside her apartment, my old life now playing out on her social media. She was still posting photos of Ella and Daniel at a winery, Ella having brunch, Ella smiling on a boat with friends who used to be mine. I watched every story, every post, looking for cracks, until I found one, a video clip, 3 seconds long. Harper turning the camera toward Daniel, then laughing. Only for a split second, but I saw it. The scar. It had returned. A tiny, raised mark on her left temple. One she used to cover with makeup. But she must have missed it that day. That was her, not me. And now I had proof. But I still didn't have Daniel. I needed to see him, to talk to him, to make him remember who I was. So I made a plan. The next part wasn't going to be easy, but I was done hiding, done watching my life from behind glass. I was ready to come back, even if I had to burn everything down to do it. I knew I couldn't just show up at Daniel's place and expect him to believe me. Even if he opened the door, even if I shouted until my voice cracked, he'd look at me, at the woman the world now called Harper, and close it in my face. Or worse, call security. So I had to be strategic. I had to stop acting like the betrayed woman and start thinking like the woman who was replaced, because there's a difference. A betrayed woman might cry. A replaced woman? She plans. That night, I didn't sleep again. My mind kept looping one memory on repeat. The day I introduced Daniel to Harper. It was 2 years ago. We were at my apartment, sitting out on the balcony with wine and music humming low through the speakers. Daniel had brought a bottle of Malbec and 3 glasses. Harper had shown up late, wearing that red wrap dress I'd always said made her look dangerous. She kissed my cheek too fast, flashed him that perfect, slightly too charming smile, the one she used when she wanted something. "I've heard so much about you," she said to Daniel, eyes locked on him a second too long. I laughed it off back then, told myself I was being paranoid. Harper was just being Harper. But now I wonder, was that the moment it began? Was she watching us back then? Even in that first hour, calculating the way he looked at me? Was she already studying my voice, my expressions, the way he responded to my touch? Now I had no choice but to confront him, but not as the woman they thought I was. I needed to find the version of myself that was buried under all of Harper's stolen glamour. The real Ella. Sharp, observant, strategic. So I waited until Sunday. Daniel always went to the farmer's market in Soho on Sundays around 10 a.m. He used to drag me there when we first started dating. Said it made him feel grounded, like we weren't just city people constantly staring at screens. We'd buy tulips and French cheese and argue over which apple variety was actually worth eating raw. So I knew where he'd be. And at 9:50 a.m. I was there first. I sat at a table near the vendor who sold the weird honey lavender lattes Daniel used to pretend not to like. At 10:08 I saw him, taller than I remembered, wearing the navy coat I bought him last Christmas, and walking beside him, her, Harper, in my sunglasses. I ducked my head, pulled my hood tighter. They walked right past me. I waited until they stopped near a stand selling citrus. Harper leaned in close, pointing at something. Daniel nodded absently. I stood up. My heart was pounding so hard I couldn't hear the market noise anymore. I walked straight toward them. 10 steps. 5. I called his name. Daniel. He didn't look up at first. I stepped closer. Daniel, it's me. Finally he turned. At first I saw nothing in his eyes, just confusion. And then something flickered. Recognition? Harper, he asked, brow furrowing. And then she turned. Her entire body stiffened. She saw me. I smiled at her. Hello, sister. The silence was so loud. Harper's face turned white. She stepped in front of Daniel like a shield. Daniel, don't. She's not well, she said quickly. This is what I told you about. She escaped the clinic. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because of the sheer madness of hearing her say that so calmly, so smoothly as if it were true. She's lying to you, I said to Daniel. I'm Ella. I'm the woman you were supposed to marry. She stole my identity. Ask her something. Anything. Ask her the name of your grandmother's cat. Ask her how we met. Ask her what she said to you the night before your job interview at Westbridge. His eyes darted between us. He looked scared, not for himself, but like someone whose entire grip on reality had just loosened. Daniel, Harper said again. Her voice wobbled now. She's having another episode. That's when I pulled out my phone. I had the photo. The one with the scar. I held it out. Zoomed in. See that? That's her. She's not me. That's her. He stared. I could see the cracks forming. I pressed forward. Your birthday, I said quickly. January 3rd. You hate chocolate. You pretended to like my mother's lasagna. The first night you told me you loved me, you were drunk, and I said it back even though I wasn't sure. And I only told you that 6 months later, after the ski trip, remember? Harper stepped back. Her face fell. And Daniel, he was crying. We didn't speak right away. He just stared broken at the photo, then at me, then back at her. Harper, he said, quietly. She didn't answer. I thought, he began. You told me she died. What? I froze. I looked at her. She couldn't meet my eyes. You told him I died? I whispered. Harper was trembling now. I had to, she said. You were gone. No one knew what had happened. It was easier this way. I couldn't even respond. My whole body was numb. Daniel looked like the ground had given out beneath him. You told me she died, Harper. I thought she had, she screamed. I thought she was gone, and I loved you, Daniel. I loved you more than she ever did. I gave you everything. I was better for you. People were watching now. Whispers rippled through the market. And still I couldn't move. Because her words weren't just crazy. They were real. She hadn't done this out of boredom or spite. She had done it because she believed she deserved my life more than I did. And that was terrifying. The police were called. Harper was taken in. She didn't resist. Maybe she knew it was over. Daniel followed me to a quiet cafe after, but neither of us could speak at first. When we finally did, it was awkward, tentative. He apologized over and over, said he felt sick, betrayed, used, but I wasn't ready to forgive him. Not yet. He'd believed her. He'd let her replace me. Even if she'd lied, even if she'd manipulated him, a part of him hadn't noticed, hadn't seen me. That hurt more than I could admit out loud. Later that night, back at the apartment, I looked in the mirror for a long time. I didn't look like Ella Morgan anymore. Not fully. I looked like someone who had survived something vicious and personal. Someone who had been erased and still found a way back. But it wasn't over. Harper had stolen so much more than a relationship. She had accessed my business accounts, sold my shares, lied to my investors. The legal battle had just begun, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like myself again, and I was going to take it all back, one truth at a time. People think once the truth comes out, things magically go back to normal. They think the apology makes it better, that the betrayal loses its sting once it's dragged into the light. But that's not how it works, not even close, because when someone steals your life, not your wallet, not your car, your life, and wears it like a second skin, it doesn't just take time to recover. It takes war. The kind that doesn't play out in sudden explosions, but in 1,000 tiny emotional landmines. Like walking into a room full of strangers and realizing they know her better than they know you, even though she stole everything from you. After Harper's arrest, the story hit the news. They called it the sister swap scandal. Clickbait headlines, buzzwords like identity theft, domestic fraud, emotional manipulation. Everyone wanted a piece of it. Every blog, every morning show, every podcast suddenly had an opinion on how it could happen and signs to look out for. But none of them knew how it felt. They didn't know what it was like to scroll through a social feed and see your own face smiling back at you on her account. To read Harper's captions, her words, posted under your photos with comments from your friends saying, "You look amazing, Ella." And realizing she had replied with your tone, your humor, your memories. And no one questioned it, because Harper was good, too good. The truth is, she didn't just steal my life. She studied it first. According to the investigator I hired, Yes, I hired a private investigator because I didn't trust anyone anymore. Harper had started planning this over a year before the accident. She'd created a fake therapist email account to message me from. She was the one who recommended the wellness retreat I went to last October, the one in Montana where I spent a week offline, in a remote mountain cabin, finding clarity. While I was off-grid, my emails were accessed. My apartment was copied, down to the scent of the lotion in my bathroom. That's how she prepared. She didn't just invade. She became. But identity theft wasn't the only crime. The real betrayal ran deeper. During the months I was gone, Harper had taken over my equity shares in the startup I co-founded, a mental wellness app for women called Hollow. It was small when I started it, but I'd grown it from nothing. The brand was built on my voice, my pain, my recovery after our dad left and our mom fell apart. Harper had never cared about it, but she cared about the money. And while posing as me, she negotiated a $2.4 million angel investment deal. She'd used a fake lawyer to sign the documents. Then, she diverted the investment into her own shell company, one she had set up in my name. The trail was digital, but every paper had her fingerprints, not mine. The real hell began with the court case. I sat in a room full of strangers, my own lawyers, Harper's attorneys, people who didn't know either of us, but who would soon have to decide which of us deserved to be believed. It was surreal. I had to prove I was myself. Do you know what that's like? To stand up and list the name of your first pet, the street you grew up on, the name of your 5th grade teacher, your college dorm, your favorite cereal, all to prove you're you. And while I spoke, Harper sat 3 feet away, in a gray suit, her expression cold, her body still. When she was asked to speak, she cried, said she missed her sister, said I was mentally unstable, said I had fabricated a delusion that she was the imposter because I was having a psychotic break. She even brought up a hospital visit I made 2 years ago after I collapsed from burnout, called it a nervous breakdown. My lawyer objected. The judge allowed it. Every word Harper said was carefully chosen. Every tear was timed. She wasn't just fighting back. She was performing. And I couldn't lie. A small part of me felt afraid. Afraid she'd win again. Afraid the system would fail me the way people had. Because, let's be honest, the world is built to doubt women, especially emotional ones, especially when the other woman looks calm, rational, composed, like Harper. But then something changed. 3 days into the hearings, the PI I'd hired handed me a flash drive. On it, audio, video, emails. One of them was a voice memo, a recorded conversation between Harper and her ex, Logan, the guy she dated on and off for years. Apparently, Logan had gotten fed up after she ghosted him for money she promised. He came forward when he saw the news coverage. In the recording, Harper says, I should have been her. I always should have. Ella's so boring, so safe. Everyone trusts her. All I had to do was slip in when she disappeared. She made it too easy. She laughs, then adds, she'll thank me when this is over. I've done more with her life than she ever would have. I stared at the screen, shaking. That was the moment the fear left, because now I had proof, not just of what she did, but why. At the next hearing, my lawyer played the clip. Harper's face cracked, her hands clenched, her lip trembled, and the court saw what I had always seen behind her perfect smile. They saw the woman who didn't want her own life. She wanted mine. And when the verdict came, they gave it back to me. All of it. My name, my company, my financials, my identity, everything. But don't mistake this for a happy ending. Because getting your life back isn't like flipping a switch. It's slow. It's awkward. It's lonely. Daniel and I never got back together. Too much damage. Too much doubt. But I found myself again. And that's something Harper will never have. Not even when she pretended to be me. Because I built this life. I earned it. And no one, not even blood, gets to steal that from me ever again. Everyone tells you the court case is the end, the big moment, the victory, the turning point. But that's a lie. Winning is just the beginning. Because once the truth is out, you're left alone with the wreckage. The people who doubted you, the company you built, the identity you reclaimed, everything's scarred. Nothing fits the way it used to. It's like walking back into your house after a break-in. Even when everything's been returned, it doesn't feel like yours. The day after the verdict, I went back to Hollow, the company I co-founded. It felt strange, stepping through the glass doors with my name officially back on the building. It should have felt like home. It didn't. The receptionist, Nadia, gave me a cautious smile. "Ella," she said, like she was testing the word on her tongue. I forced a smile. "Yeah, Ella." She looked relieved but unsure. That was the thing. Everyone was unsure. The team, the interns, the partners. Even the coffee guy didn't know if he should call me Ella or Harper. That's the kind of damage identity theft causes. People start second-guessing who you are, even when you're right in front of them. The office was spotless, organized, cold. Harper had always loved minimalism. I didn't. I liked color, chaos, creative mess. Her version of my office was all clean lines, white orchids, and glass desks. I stood in the doorway and tried to feel something. Familiarity, relief, ownership. I felt nothing until I saw the whiteboard. She'd left her notes there, or my notes in her handwriting. And one thing stood out, a pitch deck for a new Hollow product line I hadn't authorized. It was a mental reset, retreat brand called Clear, meant to operate as a sister company to Hollow. But the idea was toxic. It promised unrealistic healing timelines, sold overhyped supplements, and was already being advertised to thousands of users. It wasn't just bad branding, it was dangerous. And it had my name all over it. I rushed to the IT department, pulled up my admin dashboard. The access logs showed something terrifying. Harper had pre-scheduled an entire launch cycle for Clear. Email campaigns, blog posts, podcast interviews, influencer deals. All going live in 48 hours. All under my voice, my name, my reputation. She hadn't just tried to steal my company. She tried to ruin it from the inside out before she lost it. I canceled every automation, pulled the press releases, sent out a personal message to our investors explaining the delay. But the backlash still came. People questioned my leadership. They said things like, "How could this have happened? And weren't you in control?" That's what they never understand. When someone's wearing your face, your name, your clothes, people don't question the puppet until the strings snap. By the end of the week, I was in damage control mode. Meetings, apologies, brand repairs. I barely slept. My inbox was a battlefield. But one message stopped me cold. It was from an anonymous email address. The subject line read, "You're not done." Inside was a single sentence. "You should check your offshore accounts." Attached, a screenshot of a bank statement, one I didn't recognize, but the account was under Ella Morgan. And the balance? $5.8 million. Gone. I stared at the screen, heart racing. This wasn't part of the original investigation. These accounts hadn't come up in court, which meant Harper had a backup plan. She'd opened secret investment accounts in my name while she controlled my identity. She'd funneled money out, not just from Hollow, but from personal investment accounts I'd forgotten I even had. She was still stealing from me, even from jail. I forwarded the email to my lawyer and private investigator. Within hours, they confirmed it. 2 offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Belize, both opened using forged documents. Passports, licenses, fake Ella, real money. I couldn't believe it. Even now, behind bars, she had the power to unravel me financially. And the question that kept me awake that night wasn't how she did it. It was who helped her. Because Harper was smart, but she wasn't this smart. She had help. And I was going to find out who. In the following days, we dug into Harper's communications. Most were clean, monitored calls, supervised visits. But then I got a call from Logan. Yes, that Logan. Her ex. I didn't tell you everything, he said. There was a pause on the line. She had someone inside Hollow. Someone on your team. My blood ran cold. Who? I don't know their name, but I heard her say something once before everything went down. She said, as long as he keeps feeding me access, I don't need to be in the building to control it. So, not just someone on my team, but someone I trusted. Someone I probably still worked with. That night, I sat in the dark office alone. The city lights glowing outside the windows, reflections bouncing off the glass. I looked around the space that once felt like my dream. Now it felt like a trap. I started making a list of everyone who had worked closely with Harper while I was gone. People who hadn't questioned the strange emails, the odd requests, the policy changes. People who enabled her, either by ignorance or intent. And one name kept coming up. Noah, my CTO. The same guy who told me I was being paranoid when I flagged strange logins a year ago. The same guy who vouched for Harper's tech decisions while I was in recovery. The same guy who just last week told me, I'm glad you're back. Things just weren't the same without you. I opened the server logs. I traced IP addresses. And there it was, a proxy access point. One only someone with dev-level clearance could have used. Logged in under his name. Sending data to an encrypted cloud storage. Timestamps matched the stolen funds. He wasn't just Harper's mole. He was the architect of the entire betrayal. I stared at his name in disbelief. Noah, the guy who helped me build Hollow from scratch. The one I'd called a brother. Trusted with everything. And now, he was about to find out what it meant to cross someone who had already lost everything once. Because Harper stole my life, but Noah made sure she kept it. And I was going to burn them, both to the ground. Betrayal doesn't always come with screaming or slammed doors. Sometimes it walks beside you for years smiling. I stared at Noah's name on the server logs, and I swear my hands shook. Not from fear, from rage. Because betrayal from Harper? I could almost understand it. We had a past, a tangled history of rivalry, jealousy, resentment. It had roots. But Noah? He was my co-founder, my friend. The first person who believed in me when Hollow was nothing more than a sketch in a notebook and a hopeful email to a VC firm. He was supposed to be the safe one. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed evidence, not just logs and digital footprints. I needed motive, leverage, something to dismantle the illusion he'd carefully constructed around me. So I dug, and what I found changed everything. Noah wasn't just helping Harper. He was in love with her. I uncovered a hidden folder on our internal cloud, encrypted but sloppily. Inside were messages, voice notes, files, and a series of recorded calls. In one of them, Harper's voice whispered softly, I told you, once it's mine, it's ours. All of it. Ella will be gone, and no one will even care. They'll believe what I give them. You just need to make sure the money moves. And Noah's voice replied, I'd burn this place down for you. I listened to it 4 times. I couldn't believe it. He hadn't just helped her steal my identity. He had helped her destroy everything I'd built. And I never even saw it. The most haunting part? This wasn't recent. Some of those calls were from over a year before the accident. That meant they'd been planning this long before the crash. Long before the hospital. Long before I realized anything was wrong. I had walked into my own downfall while they stood beside me, helping me fall. But here's the thing about falling. Once you hit the ground, the only direction left is up. So I made a plan. Not just to expose him. To ruin him. I started by rewriting the clear code base, the toxic wellness brand Harper had tried to sneak under my name. I made sure the project failed publicly. Investors backed out. Influencers dropped it. I issued an open statement condemning the product and revealed internal documents showing how Harper had fabricated results. The brand burned, and every finger pointed back to Noah's leadership. He started getting cold shoulders at meetings. Clients asked for me instead of him. His office door closed more often. He knew I was coming. Then I hired someone. Not a PI this time, a forensic accountant. Someone who could trace the offshore accounts, match the digital transfers, and build a timeline. Every document, every signature, every login. She found everything. And when we followed the trail far enough, we found the real twist. Harper didn't open those accounts. Noah did. He used her as a distraction, a scapegoat. He framed her as the mastermind while quietly rerouting most of the stolen funds into his own shadow corporations. He used her, just like he used me. So I made one final move. I invited him to lunch. A neutral place. Rooftop cafe. No tension. No suspicion. He smiled when he saw me, like the past didn't exist. "Ella," he said, "I'm glad we're reconnecting. Things have felt off." I nodded. "Yeah, off." We talked about Hollow, the product, the fallout. He tried to spin a narrative, how he'd tried to manage things while I was recovering, how Harper had manipulated him to. He was calm, polished, practiced, until I dropped a USB on the table and slid it across to him. "What's this?" he asked. I leaned forward, smiling. "Insurance." His fingers tightened around his fork. "Inside," I said, "are full financial records of the stolen funds. IP logs proving you accessed the accounts. Audio of you and Harper planning the fraud. A detailed timeline of every illegal move you made." He didn't move. "I've already sent copies to my legal team, the board, and the DA," I added. "This one's for you, just so you understand what happens next." He stood up, furious. "You're bluffing." I stood too. "No, Noah, you're drowning." I walked away before he could say another word. 3 hours later, his key card stopped working. By morning, he was publicly removed as CTO. By noon, the press got wind of it. By evening, Noah Becker was arrested for corporate fraud, identity theft, and wire fraud. His mugshot was everywhere. And Harper? Still behind bars. Alone. Abandoned. Exactly how she left me. That night, I stood in my old apartment, the real one, not the cold box Harper had lived in. It still smelled like me. Still had my art on the walls. My books. My plants. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole. Not happy, but whole. Rebuilding doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning where the cracks were and pouring steel into them. They took almost everything from me, but I took it all back. And then some. I thought taking Noah down would bring peace. Closure, maybe. But instead, all it did was open another door when I had kept locked tight inside me. Because when you burn the traitors, sometimes you're still left staring at the original fire starter. And for me, that was Harper. Noah used her, lied to her, exploited her obsession. But Harper made the choice to become me. She crossed the line first. She knew where it would lead, and she walked anyway. And now, with Noah gone, there was no one left for her to hide behind. It was time. I had to see her. Not in my nightmares. Not through security footage or voice recordings. In person. Face to face. It wasn't easy. She'd been moved twice since the initial arrest. First from holding to a low-security facility, then to a mental health unit after she refused to speak during her hearings. For months, she didn't say a word. Not to lawyers. Not to doctors. Not to anyone. Part of me wondered if guilt had finally buried her. Another part feared she was simply waiting, planning something else. The day I scheduled the visit, it rained, not soft, romantic rain, but thick, punishing sheets of water that made the city feel like it was trying to drown itself. My Uber stopped at a plain concrete building just outside the city. Not a prison, not quite a hospital, somewhere in between. Security walked me in. I wore no makeup, no jewelry, no perfume. I didn't want her to see me as the version of Ella she had stolen. I wanted her to see the one she couldn't break. The room they brought me into was small. A round table, 2 chairs, a camera in the corner. A silence so sharp it hummed in my ears. And then the door opened. She walked in slowly, wearing beige scrubs and plastic slippers. Her hair was longer, darker, tangled. She looked older or maybe just hollow, and when her eyes met mine, she smiled. It was the same smile from the wedding photos, from the staged Ella selfies, from the clear press launch, except this time it was empty. "So," she said, sitting across from me, "you came." "I had to," I replied. She shrugged. "I figured." There was a long silence. I didn't ask how she was. Didn't ask if she wanted anything. I had questions, but not the kind you say out loud. Why? How long? What did I do that made you hate me so much? But instead I said, "You almost destroyed me." She tilted her head. "No, I became you. I'm not just hair and posture and smile patterns, Harper." Her lip curled slightly. "No, but those help." I stared at her, really stared. She wasn't insane. Not truly. She was brilliant, methodical, damaged in ways I might never understand. But she knew exactly what she had done. "You copied everything," I said. She nodded. "I kept journals," she said. "I watched your interviews, your pitch meetings. I studied your voice patterns, your text habits, your relationships. I learned how you sat at your desk, how you stirred your coffee. Why?" That was the only word that finally slipped from my throat. She laughed, and it wasn't cruel. It was small, childlike, almost innocent. "Because you were loved," she whispered, "and I wasn't." I didn't expect that. She continued, quietly. "Mom always called you the pretty one, the smart one, the bright one. I was the moody kid, the extra weight, the quiet shadow. I spent my whole life in rooms where you were already shining." "That's not an excuse," I said. "No," she said, smiling again. "It's a reason." I stood. I couldn't sit across from her anymore. "Do you even feel bad?" She looked up at me. "I don't know how to feel sorry," she said honestly, "but I do feel finished." I turned to walk out, but her voice stopped me at the door. "You can have your name back," she said, "but you'll never get your innocence back." I paused, then faced her one last time. "I don't need innocence," I said. "I have clarity now, and that's something you'll never get." I walked out of that room lighter, not healed, but not bleeding either. 3 months later, I held a press conference. I told my story, the truth, to the world. Not the edited, PR-approved version, the real one. A story of betrayal, survival, theft, and identity. I was raw, vulnerable, but I stood tall, and the world listened. The video went viral in 3 days. Investors who once distanced themselves came back with stronger support. Hollow grew faster than ever, not because I was flawless, but because I was real. People often ask if I forgive her. I don't, but I released her. I let go of the obsession, because the moment I stopped needing her to pay, I started living again. When you spend months clawing your way out of someone else's shadow, silence doesn't feel peaceful. It feels suspicious. It took me weeks to adjust after I visited Harper for the last time. Weeks where I would wake up at 3 a.m. and check my phone expecting another headline, another secret leak, another betrayal waiting to erupt. But there was nothing. No emails, no court notices, no messages from Harper. Just quiet, and it scared me more than any of the chaos ever did. The world had started moving on, but I hadn't. Everyone saw the viral interview, the carefully articulated story I put out. The comeback queen, the stolen identity survivor, the CEO who rose from the ashes. I became a symbol. People applauded me in elevators, wrote articles about my strength, sent flowers to my office. And every time someone said, "You're so inspiring," I smiled and nodded. While inside, something kept whispering, "Are you really you now?" It was hard to tell. I had my company back, my reputation, my name, but I no longer knew who I was when I wasn't fighting for something. When you spend so long surviving, the absence of danger feels like a vacuum, and I needed to fill it, Not with revenge, not with vengeance, but with something that made me feel alive again. So I left. Not for good, just for clarity. I took a one-way flight to Seattle, where no one knew me, where I didn't have to be Ella Morgan the CEO, or Ella Morgan the sister who was betrayed, or Ella Morgan the face of corporate recovery. I stayed in a small apartment downtown with creaky wooden floors and a view of the harbor. No luxury, no pressure, no schedule, just silence I could choose for myself. For the first time in years, I walked without checking shadows. I sat in cafes with my journal open, not because I was planning my next strategic launch, but because I wanted to remember what my own handwriting looked like when I wasn't documenting pain. I painted again, not well, not like Harper, but enough to get my fingers dirty and my thoughts quieter. One night, I walked into a local open mic night at a bookstore, and when someone canceled last minute, the host asked if anyone else wanted to read. I raised my hand. I read a piece I had written the day after visiting Harper, about what it means to be erased and still find your outline again. I was shaking, but when I looked up after the last line, people were crying. Strangers came up afterward, hugging me, telling me their own stories of sisters, of betrayal, of being silenced. It hit me then. My story wasn't just about business or identity theft. It was about identity, period, and how easily it slips through our fingers when we let others define us. That night, I started a project I hadn't dared dream of before. A foundation, not connected to Hollow, not about tech or branding, but about voice. A nonprofit that would help women reclaim their identities, legally, emotionally, socially after trauma. Abuse survivors, cult survivors, identity theft victims, girls who aged out of foster care with no birth records, women emerging from shelters with no documents, no resources. I called it original, because the world will try to copy, distort, or erase you. But there's always a version of you untouched beneath the wreckage. Building original was different from Hollow. It wasn't about innovation or valuation. It was about impact. I met women who had been forgotten by the system, who didn't have millions to fight court cases or launch public statements. They had scars, yes, but also fire. They reminded me of myself. And I realized I didn't need to erase the pain Harper caused. I needed to repurpose it, turn it into something that made someone else's load a little lighter. 6 months later, back in New York, Hollow was stronger than ever. The board had changed. We brought in new blood, ethical minds. The press had moved on. Harper was still in custody. Her psychological review ruled her mentally competent, and she was awaiting trial. Noah took a plea deal. He served time and disappeared from the tech scene. But me? I was whole again. Not the same, but maybe that's the point. On the anniversary of the day Harper stole my identity, I stood on the rooftop of Hollow's headquarters, alone. I closed my eyes and breathed in the city. Not the fear, not the betrayal, just the air. I whispered into the wind. You didn't take my life, Harper. You just showed me how badly I wanted to keep it. It's strange how the mind prepares for confrontation. It doesn't always scream or panic. Sometimes it's eerily quiet, like the silence right before a thunderstorm. That's what it felt like, standing on the courthouse steps, staring up at the building that would decide both our fates. 12 months ago, I didn't know if I'd ever see this day. I wasn't sure I'd even survive the wreckage Harper left behind. She didn't just steal my identity. She dismantled my entire foundation. My business, my relationships, my confidence, all of it, twisted into a story that suited her. But now I was here, no longer questioning reality, no longer searching for the truth. I had it, and today I was ready to tell it. The courthouse was colder than I expected, not just in temperature, but in mood, all marble and stale air, as if even the walls had grown tired of holding people's pain. The bailiff checked me in without eye contact. A woman in a navy suit nodded toward the hallway I needed to walk down. Each step echoed louder than it should have. I could feel my pulse in my throat, but not from fear, from clarity. from the weight of what this moment meant. Not just for me, but for every woman who's ever been silenced, doubted, or told that the betrayal they experienced wasn't real enough to matter. As I entered the courtroom, a hush fell, eyes turned, cameras paused. I recognized a few of the faces: a former investor who pulled out when the news broke, a tech journalist who called me emotionally unstable in an article he never apologized for, an old colleague from Hollow who I once considered a friend before she took a job offer from Harper's fake company. They were all here, probably curious how the real Ella Morgan looked in person. I didn't give them a show. I took my seat and exhaled quietly. Then the doors opened again, and in walked Harper. I expected to feel rage when I saw her, but I didn't. What I felt was something colder. She looked small, not just in frame, but in spirit, as if she'd already resigned to the version of herself she'd become. Her wrists were cuffed in front of her, and her chin stayed low. Gone were the tailored blazers, the confident smirk, the slicked-back power bun she used when she posed as me. Now, she looked like a shadow wearing human skin. But don't get me wrong, the weight of her presence still punched me in the chest. After all, this was the woman who'd used my own face to destroy me. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Then the trial began. The prosecution opened with a clean summary of facts: the timeline of identity theft, the wire transfers, the impersonations, the accounts accessed illegally. They displayed photographs, internal emails, digital evidence, and testimony excerpts from people Harper fooled. But it wasn't until they played the voicemail, the one Harper left a former investor pretending to be me, using my exact cadence and tone, that the jury's faces began to shift. You could see it, the realization. She didn't just scam, she became me, and that terrified them. Her defense attorney, of course, painted a different picture. They describe Harper as a high-functioning dissociative with unresolved trauma, someone lost in the competitive identity of her older sister. They pulled out childhood stories, how I was the favored one, the overachiever, how Harper always lived in my shadow. She didn't want to hurt Ella, the lawyer argued. She wanted to be her. I stared straight ahead. If Harper had looked at me just once, I might have believed there was still some part of her that regretted what she'd done. But she didn't. Not during the opening. Not even when I took the stand. The moment I stood, I could hear the murmurs die down again. Everyone leaned forward, pens ready, camera lenses adjusting. I stepped up to the witness box, raised my right hand, swore to tell the truth, and sat down. What came next wasn't rehearsed. I didn't write it out or memorize it. I spoke from memory, raw and unrevised. I told the court how it started. The tiny shifts in my calendar, my login credentials being denied, passwords changing. I told them about the moment I found a new website under my company's name, one I didn't authorize, with Harper's contact info hidden behind a fake shell corporation. I told them about the first phone call with a VC who thought he was speaking to me, only to realize I'd never met him. And I told them what it felt like when no one believed me. How betrayal becomes isolation. How your voice starts to feel like a scream underwater, heard but never understood. Then I looked directly at Harper. No tears, no rage, just calm, steady breath. You didn't just take my identity, I said. You stole my name, my friends, my years of work. You took my face and weaponized it against me. You took my voice and used it to speak lies. But the most devastating thing you took, I paused, was the belief I had that family meant safety. Some in the gallery audibly gasped. One reporter lowered her notepad. Harper didn't flinch, but something in her eyes flickered. The smallest twitch, like recognition, maybe even shame. I'll never know. I continued. You forced me to rebuild from scratch. You forced me to re-earn my name in the eyes of people who had no idea who to trust. And still here I am, not ruined, not erased, not silent. And then I ended with a line I hadn't planned. But I want you to know I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I do. Silence. It felt eternal. And when I stepped down, I didn't look back. I walked past the gallery, past the whispers, past the cameras and the judgment. I returned to my seat and felt free. Not victorious. Not vindicated. Just whole. That night, I didn't go out. I didn't watch the news. I sat in my apartment with the lights low and played old voicemails from friends, from my younger self. Just reminders of the life I built before Harper rewrote the script. And I smiled, because tomorrow the final verdict would come. And whatever it was, I already knew I had one. It was a Monday morning, the kind where the sky felt unnaturally still. No wind, no birds, not even the usual hum of city life. I remember thinking, even the world feels like it's holding its breath. I sat in the courthouse hallway alone. No cameras today, no media frenzy, no whispers or wandering eyes, just a few quiet steps echoing down the marble corridor and my own thoughts clawing for attention. This was it, the day everything would either fall into place or fall apart for good. My phone buzzed. A message from Amanda. No matter what happens in that room today, you already won. She was right. I had survived the worst of it, but I needed this final chapter. I needed the law to speak, not for vengeance, not to feel superior, but to finally hear someone say you were wronged. And this is justice. The bailiff appeared. They're ready for you. I stood, legs steady, heart racing. The courtroom was colder than I remembered. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones, not because of temperature, but because of memory. The last time I stood here, I had to relive every painful detail of my sister's betrayal. But this time I was here for closure. Harper sat at the defense table, wrists cuffed in front of her, expression hollow. Her once glamorous hair was now dull and tied back in a messy bun. The girl who once wore designer heels to breakfast now sat in the courtroom like a ghost of her former self. I didn't look away, and neither did she. The judge entered and everyone stood. The murmurs quieted. Tension tightened in the air like a held breath. Ms. Harper Morgan, the judge began, his voice slow and measured. You have been found guilty of multiple counts, including identity theft, corporate fraud, and financial conspiracy. I swallowed hard. Each word felt like a bell toll, not just for Harper, but for everything we used to be. Sisters, partners, family. Your actions caused not only personal devastation, but widespread professional consequences that extended beyond your victim and affected dozens of livelihoods. I looked down briefly at my hands. They were steady now. Months ago, I couldn't hold a pen without shaking. That was progress. You are hereby sentenced to 12 years in federal prison with eligibility for parole after 8, pending psychological evaluation and financial restitution to Ms. Ella Morgan. The gavel came down. One sharp, final crack that echoed through the courtroom like thunder. Harper blinked, but didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, frozen. And maybe in that moment, she finally realized what she had done. Or maybe she still believed none of this was her fault. I'll never know. When I rose to leave, the bailiff stepped forward to escort her out. For a brief second, our eyes locked. And I saw something flicker behind hers. Regret? Resentment? Fear? Whatever it was, it passed quickly. And she was gone. The courtroom emptied. The reporters filed out quietly, probably off to write some headline like, Sister Saboteur sentenced to 12 years. But I didn't care. I wasn't there for the headlines anymore. I was there for peace. Outside the courthouse, the sky had cleared. Light spilled across the courthouse steps like a quiet promise. Amanda was waiting for me at the curb. She pulled me into a hug, tight and long, and exactly what I didn't know I needed. It's over, she whispered. No, I said, pulling back. It's beginning. The next few months were a whirlwind. Investors who had pulled away during the scandal returned. Sheepishly at first, then with full support. I signed 3 new partnerships, launched a new product line that sold out in 2 days. But beyond business, something deeper had changed. I started a foundation in my name, not to remind the world of my pain, but to empower women who had been manipulated, silenced, or erased. We held workshops, legal clinics, therapy sessions. We offered everything Harper had tried to strip from me. Community, identity, and power. I became more visible, more vocal. I gave TED Talks, spoke at conferences, not as a victim, but as a cautionary tale turned comeback queen. And every single time someone approached me and said, "Your story helped me leave my abusive partner," or "You gave me the courage to start again," I realized something. Harper didn't destroy me. She gave me something else, a louder voice, a sharper mission, a deeper strength. I didn't just reclaim my life. I rebuilt it brick by brick. One evening, about 6 months after the sentencing, I received a letter. No return address. I knew the handwriting immediately. It was from Harper. I held it in my hands for a long time, just staring, and then I tossed it into the fireplace, not out of bitterness, but because I had no more space left for the past. Some stories don't deserve a reread. If you've stayed with me through this journey, from the moment I was erased to the courtroom, to the rebuilding of my name, thank you. Not just for watching, but for believing that even in the darkest moments, something new can begin. If you've been betrayed, silenced, used, or underestimated, I hope this story gave you more than entertainment. I hope it gave you permission to fight back, to stand tall, to write your own ending. Because I did. And now, I'm just getting started. Clap or board, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss another story like this one. Tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? And if you've ever come back from betrayal stronger than before, I want to hear your story too. Until next time, this was Ella Morgan, and this was my truth.